What's up, guys? My name is Mark Drew, and I'm a 301 instructor here at Avant Media Institute. And today we're going to talk about major and minor skills and how to identify and find them. Let's get to it. Now, before we get started, let's understand what we're looking at exactly. So, pretty simple. You have the white notes and you have the black notes. The white notes are going to be your natural notes. The blacks are going to be your accidentals. And your accidentals, for the most part, will determine whether that key is sharp or flat, depending on the scale. But first, I want to kind of make sure we're understanding what we're looking at. And if you look at it, it's always, we have a set of 2 accidentals with a space in between and 3 accidentals with a space in between, and it just repeats. So as long as you can identify that, we're on a pretty good start, at least understanding what we're looking at. Now let's talk about the musical alphabet. So our musical alphabet is a little different than our English alphabet. English alphabet, of course, starts A, B, C. So this one in the musical alphabet, it starts with C. Now, we went over which ones are our naturals and our accidentals. Before the sets of 2, you'll always find C. C is right here, C is right here, and C is right here. It starts with C and ends with C. Let's go ahead and take a look at the order of this. So we have C right here. This next natural note is D, followed by E, F, G. Now we don't have H. That's as far as it goes, because then we have A, B, C. So that's the whole octave. And the accidentals, let's take a look at how they would kind of work. So this right here, we have C. This right here is, think of it, it could be one of 2 things depending on the scale you're in. And once we kind of identify how to find the scales, it'll all make a little more sense. This could be C sharp or D flat. Now we talked about the accidentals helping us identify which one was sharp or flat. Think of sharp going up and flat going down. So this right here, depending on what scale you're in, will be C sharp or D flat. This one right here will either be the flat to E or the sharp to D. So kind of the same thing, same concept with these over here from F all the way to B. This right here could also be F sharp or G flat. This one is G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat. So now that we understand the musical alphabet, let's get into how we are able to find a scale. A scale is an order of 7 notes ordered by a fundamental frequency or pitch. If it's going up in pitch, we have an ascending scale. If it's going down in pitch, we have a descending scale. Now, before we talk about learning how to find the scale, let's talk about the distance traveled between the intervals or the notes. So we're on C. Let's talk about what a whole step is. A whole step is when you kind of think of it, you have to jump over one note to get to the next one. So we have to jump over this C sharp or D flat to get to D, right? So from C to D is a whole step. From D to E is a whole step because we jump over this D sharp or E flat. Now, there's nothing in between this E and F, so from E to F would not be a whole step, but from E to F sharp would be a whole step. So from F sharp, we have to jump over the G to get to A flat, and from A flat or G sharp, we have to jump over A to get to B flat. And then from B flat, we have to jump over B to get to C. So those are your whole steps. So now let's talk about half steps. Half steps are just the next note to the left or right. So if we're on C again, a half step up from C would be C sharp. A half step up from C sharp would be D. A half step from D would be E flat or D sharp. And a half step from here would be E, and so forth. So now that we understand what whole steps and half steps are, let's talk about the different scales of what they sound like. Now, they all have different characteristics. Now, major sounds happy. Majors, think of like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Let's look at a major scale. Sounds real bright, right? Now, the minor scale sounds a little more sad and melancholy. Let's check it out right here. A little less distinguished than the major scale. Now let's talk about how to find the major scale. So we're going to start with the easiest one, which is C major. You'll notice a key characteristic about this here in just a second. So the formula for the major scale is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Again, that's whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And if you have trouble remembering that, think 2-1, 3-1, because there's 2 whole steps followed by 1 half step, and 3 whole steps followed by 1 half step. So let's start on C. And we talked about what a whole step was, so we're on C right here. A whole step from C would take us to D. A whole step from D will take us to E. A half step from E takes us to F. A whole step from F takes us to G. A whole step from G takes us to A. A whole step from A takes us to B. And our last half step brings us back to C. If you notice something about C major, it is all natural notes. And that's the only scale in the major scale that is like that. Let's look at a few different ones. Next one we're going to look at is G major. We're going to use that same formula. We're just starting from G. We're on G. Now let's start our formula. A whole step from G brings us to A. A whole step from A brings us to B. A half step from B takes us to C. A whole step from C takes us to D. A whole step from E takes us to E. And here's where our first accidental comes in, because the last whole step wouldn't take us from E to F. It would take us from E to F sharp. And our last half step brings us back to G. Now let's look at A. We start on A. A whole step from A would take us to B. And we already established that a whole step from B takes us to C sharp. Now, if you're asking why is this C sharp and not D flat, every letter in the musical alphabet has to be represented one time, whether it's a natural, flat, or sharp. You can't have a D flat and a D in the same scale. C is going to be being left out at that point. We have to include C. A half step from C sharp takes us to D. A whole step from D takes us to E. And we already established that a whole step from E takes us to F sharp. Our last whole step from F sharp takes us to G sharp. And our last half step brings us back to A. So no matter where you start from on the keyboard or on the piano, if you use that formula, you will find the major scale every time, no mistakes. So now that you learn how to figure out the major scale, let's talk about the rules of how to make it minor. It's very simple for both, actually. So for minor, what you're going to do is, so remember how each scale has 7 notes? In the minor, you're going to flatten the 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th in the major scale. So let's look at C major and let's turn that into C minor. So we talked about C major being all natural notes. Now we're going to play it slowly and figure out how to turn it into minor. So we have 1 and 2 stay the same, or C and D. Our 3 is E, but we're going to flatten it to E flat. So now the 1 and 3 sound like this. 4 and 5 stay the same, which was F and G. And then our 6 and 7 are now going to switch from A and B to A flat and B flat back at C. So C minor will sound like this in comparison to C major. So you do that for every one, and it applies to every major scale. You flatten the 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th. Now it's important to know every major scale has a relative minor. What does relative minor mean? Think of it as their twin, because it's the exact same scale, you're just starting from a different place. And the way you identify that is in the major scale, it's the 6th interval every time. So let's look at C major. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're on A. A minor is a relative minor to C major, which means it's also going to be all natural notes. Let's put that to the test. Earlier we talked about A major being A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. Let's convert A major into A minor and make sure we're right on this. 1 and 2 stay the same, or A and B. The C sharp is now going to be flattened to C. So the C sharp is now C. Our 1, 2, and 3 are A, B, and C. 4 and 5 stay the same. So D and E don't change. Then we have the F sharp and G sharp, or our 6 and 7. We're going to flatten those to F, G, back at A. All natural notes. Now if you're in the minor scale, the relative major is always the third. So if we're on A, 1, 2, C major. So if you apply all of these rules to the major, minor, you will find the scales every single time. So now that we went over those 3 different scales and how to find them, let's do a little bit of ear training. I'm going to play a few scales and you're going to tell me what you think they are. So here's number 1. One more time, that's go ahead and pause the video and give yourself enough time to think of your answer. If you guessed major, you're correct. Now let's go into the next one. One more time. If you guessed minor, you would be correct. Now it's important to know to not confuse pitch with tone. So just because I'm playing something in a higher octave does not mean it's major. And if I'm playing something in a lower octave, doesn't mean it's minor. So if you're looking for a little more practice, get out your MIDI keyboard, practice your scales. If you don't have access to a MIDI keyboard, there's a lot of free piano apps that you can use on your phone. 20 minutes a night, you'll find yourself improving really, really quickly. Another resource for good practice, there's an app called Tenuto. I'm not sponsored by them, I just really like this app. What it does is they'll play you scales, they can play you intervals, chords, and kind of quiz you on what you're hearing to practice your ear training. Now if this video was helpful for you, go ahead and leave a comment below. Let us know if you liked it, or let us know if you would like to dive deeper into music theory. For more content like this, go ahead and like and subscribe. It's Mark Drew, thanks for tuning in.